Conversations, episode Mark McGuire. Perhaps the U.S. could have used Big Mac in their title game for the WBC yesterday, but I digress. We will not give any more negative press to the WBC. We've already done that in a few episodes in the past. New listeners, welcome in. Longtime listeners, welcome back. Happy to have you either way. This is your host, K-Bex, and I'm coming at you just before the madness gets underway. We're recording here on a Wednesday evening before the NCAA tournament kicks off, and I could not be more excited. These are the episodes I love. I've got nothing but some thoughts and a bracket in front of me, and so this is going to be unfiltered takes. It's going to be no notes, one take stuff here. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. I'm going to try to keep it to a length where you can listen to this right before the madness starts tomorrow. Most of you will probably listen to this the night that it is released or the morning afterwards, and hopefully this can be helpful to you if you are filling out a bracket or if you're just trying to get a sense of what's going on as we head into the beginning of the first round. A little bit of a plug, well, first of a few plugs. If you are somebody looking for a tournament pool to enter, the Von Hugendong CBB 16 for the men's tournament is open, and we are playing for a little bit of coin. If you know, you know. If you just want to play for fun, that is all right too. And for the first time, at least in terms of its naming, Von Hugendong is now hosting a women's bracket pool as well. So get into both of those. It is on ESPN. You can search Von Hugendong. That's VON Hugendong. It's CBB 16 in the case of the men's and WCBB 1 in the case of the women's. Some other plugs. Make sure you follow us on social media. We are on all the major platforms. Facebook, X at KBEX_ATC. Instagram at cornversationspod. And if you want to send us a mailbag question for a future episode, let us know at conversationspod@gmail.com. We're on all the major listening platforms, and we especially appreciate ratings and comments on those. They really help us, especially the ones that do a good job with algorithms, i.e. Apple Podcasts. So if you are a listener through that platform, give us a rating, give us a comment. That really helps us get discovered by new listeners as well. So yeah, like I said, no notes here. I've just got a bracket in front of me. It is the bracket that I am going to be submitting to every pool that I enter. So what we're going to do is just break down each of the regions one by one and just kind of go through my unfiltered thoughts here. So who I think might have a good shot at moving on, the best games to watch in each region, some potential matchups that I would be really excited to see, and of course, we'll give you my picks ready down to the Final Four and the national champion. That is something that I don't put on Around the Corn Sports blog, which if you want to see all of my picks game by game, that's where you want to go. Each of the region previews are already posted on Around the Corn Sports blog, so check those out if you want to see game by game previews. But in terms of who I think is actually going to cut down the nets in Indianapolis, that is something that we'll share here at the end of this episode. So without further ado, let's jump right into the bracket here. We're going to start with the East region because that's on the top left-hand corner if you've printed a bracket off. And first thoughts here that I had when I was watching the selection show is that Duke, who really has been arguably the best team in the country all season, got hosed by seeding into this region with a number of other teams that are going to be paired up with them. And on one hand, you have to look at it and you have to say, okay, the injuries to Caleb Foster and Patrick Ngungba are going to have an impact on this team. So whether or not they're truly the best team in the country right now or not is really up for debate. And honestly, I'm not sure that the answer is yes anymore. If you had asked me 3 weeks ago, who do I think is going to win the national title, I would have said Duke. And at this present moment, spoiler alert, I do not have Duke winning the national title. So these injuries do mean that much. Ngungba obviously means a lot to their post play, and Foster does add an element in terms of their guard play that they're going to miss with Foster being out for the entire tournament. I know they've still got Cameron Boozer, so they're not a bad team at all. They deserve the number 1 seed, and I do think that they're going to be able to make a run here. But when you look at the rest of the teams in this region, it is just stacked with coaches that know how to win in March. You look at number 2, UConn. Obviously, Dan Hurley has been there before and won a national title. The number 3 seed, Michigan State, has Tom Izzo. They're starting to play pretty good basketball, so they're going to be a tough out. The 4 seed, Kansas, and Bill Self. I'm not a huge fan of Kansas to do a ton in this tournament, but you have to respect what Bill Self has been able to do at that program and throughout his career. And then the 5th seed, even, with St. John's and Rick Pitino. You've got a lot of length there, a lot of athleticism. Arguably, they're just as good as UConn when it comes to the Big East this year. So up and down this region, you're looking at teams that have the ability, both on the court and on the sidelines, to take Duke out. So I really, if you're a Duke fan, you probably did not like this draw that you got, and for good reason. I agree with you. I think it's going to be really tough to get out of it. And even if you do get out of it, how banged up are you? How capable are you to continue the success in Indianapolis? So just to look at some of the games in terms of the first round that I think are probably the can't miss games. I love that 8-9 seed game, Ohio State and TCU. Really happy that Bruce Thornton got an opportunity to finally play in an NCAA tournament. I think it would have been a travesty had the career points leader in Ohio State basketball program history not been able to make it to a single NCAA tournament. I think that would have just kind of cast a little bit of an asterisk or a cloud over what he was able to do at Ohio State, and that's unfair because he's been an excellent player for them. He has been a do-it-all guy for over 1 season. He really has been doing this for 2.5 seasons, if you will, and giving him the opportunity to go and experience March Madness is something that I think, you love to see good guys have good things happen to them, and Bruce Thornton is definitely one of those guys. So that's going to be a game that I'd love to sit down and watch. It happens to be the first game of the tournament, so I think a lot of people who are going to be sitting down and watching games on Thursday afternoon are going to get to see, and they'll get to see just how good Thornton has been, and that's something that Ohio State fans are well aware of. Another game that I think is going to be really good, St. John's and Northern Iowa. That's the infamous 5-12 matchup. Northern Iowa, in my opinion, is the strongest mid-major team in the tournament, but they were given a very difficult draw in St. John's, and so I don't know whether or not the Panthers are going to be able to prove me right and get the job done, move on into the second round, because St. John's is just really talented, and last year they had a bit of a disappointing run as that 2 seed, and they were trounced in the second round by Arkansas. So I think that there's definitely some motivation on Rick Pitino's end, definitely with his team, and that's going to be a tough game for Northern Iowa to win. So I love the matchup. I love being able to watch that one. But I don't know whether or not Ben Jacobson and his crew are going to be able to get the job done there against such a tough first-round matchup. Shout out to the 4-13 game. The reason I love this is because you've got Darren Peterson, of course. He's going to be a future lottery pick. But Dominique Daniels Jr. is a guy that you have to watch. He's Cal Baptist's point guard. He is one of the top scorers in the country. He knows how to get to the basket as a guy who's under 6 feet. He's just a joy to watch, and people are going to learn his name. Whether or not Cal Baptist only plays 1 game or not, this is their inaugural tournament game as a program, so that's fun too. But I love this guy. He's really fun to watch, and it's going to be a name that people are like, who is this guy? He's a really talented player, got excellent handles. He's going to have to do a lot for this team in order for them to have a chance against Kansas, but even if they bow out after just 1 game, he is worth watching that game for. And then the last game I have on this list, and for me, this is a game that I'd love to see at least be competitive, because I think they're coming in as like 20-point underdogs, which is a huge margin, and that's the Furman Paladins against UConn. I am not a huge fan of UConn this year. They've had some head-scratching losses that make me think that when they're coming into March, they might have the opportunity to throw one of those games in there again, and that's not going to fare well for this team. And I would love if Furman was the team who was the benefactor of that. Coming in as the 15 seed, I thought they might have been good enough to get a 13 or a 14. The pro bracketologists were saying 16. We kind of settled somewhere in the middle there, but UConn is being given a huge vote of confidence by Vegas. So I'd love to see Furman give them a game. I think they have the ability to. This is a team that has dealt with a lot of injuries this year. They've had to pull some of their younger guys out of redshirt opportunities in order to just kind of make ends meet. And this is going to be really interesting to see how Furman operates, given that they've had so much turmoil this season. I think at this point, they kind of are just taking each challenge as it comes. And those are the types of teams that sometimes can surprise you, sometimes can shock people when it comes to the NCAA tournament. So I like that game as well. Vegas is saying it's going to be a blowout. I'm saying no, absolutely take Furman to keep that game closer than those 20 points. Some games I'd love to see, and again, with this region being so stacked, there's a lot of them. You've got a potential Duke-St. John's Sweet 16 game, which would be excellent. Rick Pitino would have an opportunity to take down the top seed with his Red Storm. Obviously, that could also go Kansas-Duke, which would be a really good game as well. You'd have Cameron Boozer against Darren Peterson, future NBA lottery picks there that could face off against one another. I also love the potential of a Michigan State UCLA rematch. Now, obviously, a lot would have to happen here with UCLA being the 7 seed. They're going to have to take out likely a UConn team, unless Furman does it, but likely a UConn team in the second round. That's going to be tough. UCLA has had some injury scares, good guard play from them, but they do need those guards to be healthy in order to beat this UConn team. So right now, it's looking like that's going to be the case. Both of those guards that I'm referencing are going to be playing in the NCAA tournament, according to reports. But it is going to be a tough sell for UCLA to get into the second weekend. And I expect Michigan State to be there. So Michigan State, UConn could be an alternate there in that Sweet 16. But then, of course, amongst the 5 or so teams that I just mentioned, you're going to have an excellent Elite 8 game to get to the Final Four. My personal picks right now are Duke and UCLA to reach that game, so it could be a battle between Blue Bloods, but you've got a lot of opportunities for Blue Bloods there. It could be Duke, Michigan State. It could be Duke, UConn. It could be St. John's, UConn, or Michigan State, or UCLA. So lots of opportunities here that I think are going to be big-ticket games when you get down to the East Region Final in Washington, D.C. So I don't think this region has any possibility of being one of those left out regions, if you will, where people look at the teams and they go, I'll bother with one of those teams when they get to the Final Four. There is really too much going on here in this region, too many big names, too many big name players for people to kind of tune out before you get to the later rounds. Shifting then to the South region, you've got the defending champion Florida Gators as the 1 seed, and that's interesting in itself. I do think, though, that they've got a lot of challenges that could confront that Florida team, and this is also not the same Florida team from last season. One thing that I have concern about in terms of whether or not Todd Golden's team can make a deep run again is whether or not they're going to take care of the basketball and shoot well from behind the arc. Those were 2 things that they struggled with in the SEC tournament, and they ran up against a Vanderbilt team who took advantage of it. And that's actually one of the potential games in this region that I see as being must watch if it happens. Vanderbilt, Florida Sweet 16 would be the matchup that could take place there. And I actually like Vanderbilt's chances if they were to get to that game again. They take good care of the basketball. Tyler Tanner's been an excellent guard, and I think that they have the personnel to take Florida down, especially since Florida has not been shooting the ball well. And you need to shoot the ball well from behind the arc in March in order to survive and advance. So Florida could be they are one of 2 1 seeds, in my opinion, that are shaky. They are the 2-1 seeds, Florida being one of them. I'll give you the other one later on in this episode that I think may not have the chops to make it to the Final Four. Maybe I should revise that. They have the chops to make it to the Final Four. They may not have the consistency to make it to the Final Four. Best games to watch here in the South for the first round. I love Vanderbilt and McNeese State. Just talked about Vanderbilt a little bit earlier, but McNeese State is going to be a very popular upset pick for people. They come in third straight tournament for this team. That's incredible for a team from the Southland Conference. They're running the show down there. 3 straight tournaments while also changing over coaches this year is a testament to what they've been able to do at that program. They're going to have their hands full with Vanderbilt, though. I don't personally have that as an upset, but it is absolutely one of the ones that could happen, and I wouldn't be shocked. I love the 4-13 matchup as well, Nebraska and Troy. Nebraska is still looking for their first ever tournament win, and Fred Hoiberg's done a great job with this team. If you've watched them, if you're a Big Ten basketball fan, which I am, I've watched a fair amount of this Nebraska team. They are for real. They have the talent. I just wonder whether or not they got a tough draw here with Troy, because Troy's got a lot of size, and their guards are not afraid to scrap and get in towards the basket and try to draw fouls. They're going to be a handful for this Nebraska team. They're not going to be afraid by the size that the Big Ten team has. I do see that as a potential upset game. I have Troy moving on there, but that's going to be a very close battle throughout, I think. You've got two teams that like to play a slower pace. Neither team is likely going to stretch the lead by any significant margin, so I think that this one is definitely going to come down to the final minutes. Top games that I could see later on in the tournament. I already mentioned the Florida-Vanderbilt game. That one is obviously going to be a great rematch if it happens. The rematch of the tournament, in my opinion, comes out of the South region, and that would be in the South region final if these two teams made it, which would be chalk. It would be a potential Florida and Houston battle, which would be a rematch of last year's national title game. I love that. I don't know whether or not it's going to happen because I think that Florida is a concern to get to that point. I do like Houston to get to the Elite Eight. But if it does happen, that rematch between those coaches, there's some continuity amongst the rosters as well, so there would be a lot of familiarity there. That would be an excellent way to finish off this region. But I do not have that. I've got Vanderbilt and Houston in the South region final, and I do have Houston making it to the Final Four to join Duke from the East region. Excuse me, not Duke. What am I saying? To join Duke in the East region. So Kelvin Sampson will get yet another shot to cut down the nets at a Final Four. He's taken Houston there a couple of times already. Got very close last year, as we know, to the national title game. I think this team is built a little bit differently. They're less defensive-oriented, still very good defensively, but not as shut down as they were last year, but they are better offensively. And that obviously has a lot to do with their phenom freshman, Kingston, who is a guy who can just get to the basket and do some incredible things when he's there around the basket. So I like Houston to get through this region. If you look at their path, they're going to be the favored team in every game they play. I think a potential trip up could be the Illinois game because Illinois is so good offensively as well. But I do think that they get through that and find their way back to the Final Four. Moving over to the other side of the bracket now, we're going to focus on the West region, which is the region that features the top overall seed, Arizona Wildcats. You know, honestly, I, like a lot of people who live in the Eastern time zone, have not had a ton of opportunity to watch Arizona. I did get to sit down and watch them a little bit in the Big 12 tournament, and they are a solid basketball team. So there is good reason why they were able to take over the top overall seed from potentially Duke, Michigan, both of which were unable to win their conference tournaments. Arizona did get the job done. So I see why they were able to take that top overall seed. And when you look at what's in front of them in this region, I think it's a very doable region. In fact, I think some of their more difficult games, if you're the Wildcats, might occur before you get to the region final. And I'll kind of go into that in a little bit more detail, but let's take a look at a few of the games that I think are can't miss in the first round. That 8-9 matchup, which is going to be more than likely the opponent that Arizona will face in the second round. Utah State and Villanova. I love this matchup. I think Kevin Willard has done a really nice job bringing Villanova back as quickly as he did. Obviously, the Kyle Neptune experience did not work out so well. They started a streak that you don't want to start at Villanova, which is missing the tournament in multiple years consecutively. Willard got them back in his first season as a head coach, but he's going to have his hands full against Utah State. The Aggies are built like a power conference team. They've got some really good guards in MJ Collins and Mason Falslev, and I love what that team has been able to do with Jared Calhoun at the helm. I like Utah State in that game, but I could see it going either way. Obviously, with all these 8-9 games, they're pretty much coin flips, and if you're filling out a bracket and you don't know what to do, you might as well coin flip, because you're going to feel better if you don't win any of the games, which I have done in tournaments of the past where I try to pick them all and gone over 4. And that's not a good feeling. So if you leave it up to chance, you give it to a coin flip, at least you can't be totally upset if the results don't go the way that you picked. The 5-12 matchup between Wisconsin and High Point. This is the third 5-12 matchup in a row I've noticed that I have mentioned is can't miss. They're really good 5-12 games this year. This is, again, one of them. Wisconsin and High Point are both teams that like to score, and so it's going to be an up-tempo game that's going to feature a lot of offense. High Point defense is optional. It was the same way for them last year. They kind of ran up against a buzzsaw in Purdue in a team that knew how to defend against what High Point wanted to do. Wisconsin, maybe not as good at that, and so I think High Point has an excellent opportunity to do what a lot of people thought that they were going to be able to do last year, and they have a good chance at doing this year. But Nick Boyd is an excellent player for Wisconsin. He's the type of guy you want to have the ball in his hands when he is in a tight situation or when the team is in a tight situation. So that's going to be a tough out, and Greg Gard does a great job coaching teams. Honestly, you look at the rosters that they've had in the past. He's pulled some people from the transfer portal. Not every one of them has worked out, but he manages to get these teams playing well at the right time, and that's what Wisconsin's doing right now. So that's going to be an excellent game. I think I have to add the 6-11 game, having watched what happened last night between NC State and Texas, and their opponent is going to be the 6th seed BYU. I didn't originally think that this was going to be a game that I would question my pick of BYU. I love AJ DeBonsa. He's a great player. This alone is a reason to watch this game, is his participation in it. I think he's really excited to be playing college basketball, and that's one of the things that I love about this season is that the guys who are the lottery picks seem to really be enjoying playing college basketball, which is great to see. And it hasn't always been the case in recent seasons in the game. So I love that you see guys like DeBonsa playing with joy, making comments like, I don't know if I'm going to come back for another season or not. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, right? Just kind of teasing the fact that he's really having a lot of fun. However, BYU has kind of been cold lately. The Richie Saunders injury is going to be really interesting in this game against Texas. I think they might have some matchup issues with the Longhorns, and Saunders being the guy who could have some, kill shots from behind the arc, not having that for BYU is going to be tough when you're trying to stop this Texas team. So I really thought at first, given the way that BYU was playing against some of the teams in the Big 12 tournament, that they would not have any problem with this game, but I'm really starting to question that now based on what I saw from Texas. They're definitely going to give the Cougars a challenge. And you look at those first 4 games, and it's not very often that at least one of them doesn't move through to at least the second round. So given what we've got in front of us right now, the game tonight between SMU and Miami, presents another opportunity in theory for a team to move through beyond the first four. But I think that Texas is probably the strongest team out of that group that's left. So that one is one that we're going to have to keep an eye on in the first round. And then lastly, I like this Miami-Missouri game. I think Miami might be the better team. I love Trey Donaldson and what he's able to do as a point guard for the Hurricanes. But Missouri playing so close to home, it's going to feel like a home game. And I like that as an advantage for Missouri against Miami. Sometimes, especially in these 7-10 matchup games, you're going to expect close ones. Having a little bit of a home boost, and it is going to be a home boost. They're playing these games in St. Louis, and Columbia is not that far from where this team will be playing, that it may make all the difference in what probably is going to be a single-point affair. So that one's going to be interesting, if only to see how the presumed crowd is going to affect the outcome of this one. You don't get that very often in March Madness, but this is definitely one of those games where it'll be interesting to monitor. Potential games that we could see that could be really interesting: Arizona-Arkansas Sweet 16 matchup. That could be one of the most talent-filled games in the entire tournament. John Calipari is back doing what John Calipari is known for. He's got a young team with Darius Acuff leading the show there, and they're a handful. And they're going to be a handful for Arizona if they meet in the Sweet 16, because Arizona, as good as they've been, it's hard to stop what Acuff is able to do with the ball in his hands. He's a do-it-all guy there as a guard for Arkansas. I think that there's a lot of optimism in the Arkansas camp with this team. Last year they came in as a really talented team, but kind of took a while to get things put together. This team had a much more successful regular season, so I think we're a little bit more aware of what Arkansas is capable of doing. And you look at this potential Sweet 16 matchup, this might be Arizona's hardest game on the schedule until they get to the Final Four. Another matchup that I think could be really interesting: Gonzaga against Purdue in the Sweet 16. Gonzaga's built a little bit differently this year. We talked about how Houston was built a little bit differently. It's kind of the opposite with Gonzaga. They have been a top offensive efficiency team according to KenPom ratings for over a decade at this point, and this is the first time that they're ranked outside of the top 30 since 2014. So it's been 12 seasons since Gonzaga has been this inefficient offensively. That's the only word we can really use, because they're still pretty good offensively, and Graham Ike is a really good player down low, but they get the job done defensively, and they're going to go up against a Purdue team that is one of the most efficient offensive teams. So you see those contrasts in style potentially in the Sweet 16. You've got two teams, I think, that a lot of people look at and maybe they don't trust them. There's a lot of concern about taking Gonzaga really far in recent tournaments, although they did get to the national title game just a few seasons ago. Purdue, same thing, but Matt Painter has a long history of crashing out early in the tournament. I think both of these teams do get to the Sweet 16, and what happens once they get there is kind of anyone's guess. But my thought is you take good offense over good defense when it comes to college basketball, especially when you get to March, where it feels like the basket just looks a little bit bigger to these guys who know how to score. That would leave us with, in my opinion, a 1 versus 2 matchup yet again in the West region. And I am going to take Arizona. I think they're the most complete team. They're also the healthiest team when you look at the top seeds. And I think that does count for something. So despite that game that they're going to get against Arkansas more than likely in the Sweet 16, I do think they pass that challenge, and then they'll get themselves into the Final Four to meet the representative from the Midwest region, which is our last region we're going to cover here. We're right on schedule at about half an hour, so I'm loving the way that this is going. Hopefully you guys are loving it too. If you do like it, give me a comment. Let me know, what do you think that I've said so far that's right, and what is your upset of the tournament? I want to hear that from you guys. Let me know your Cinderella. But anyway, back to the Midwest region. this is the region that Michigan is the top overall seed in. And Michigan might be the most talented team in the tournament. But the concern that I have with Michigan, and this is not just me being a hater as a fan of a different Big Ten team, is that Michigan plays loose. And I think that they're going to come across a situation where they're playing loose. They're playing a little bit undisciplined. They're not shooting the ball well. And they come up against a team that is able to counter all of those things, something they have kind of avoided for most of the season, which is interesting because the Big Ten has been really strong from top to bottom. But they've managed to claw their way back into games that they maybe have not started all that well in. And I think that that is going to come back to bite them at some point in this tournament. The other thing that I think is going to be interesting is LJ Kaysen, the injury that happened a little bit earlier in the regular season. How is that going to affect Michigan? I do think it's going to have an impact at some point, especially when you couple this with the fact that, yeah, they're a little bit loose. They do turn the ball over more than you'd like to see from a top seed. That's where I have a concern with Michigan. That's why I don't have them going to the Final Four. Best games to watch in this region. I think you look at the 5-12 game in this region as well, which makes it a perfect 4-for-4. This is a 12 seed that I really like and I am getting behind. This is an upset that I have picked in my bracket. Akron over Texas Tech. Akron is a really good team, and I've got some listeners who are Akron grads who are going to love this, all right? We're going to wax poetic about the Zips for a minute here. Tavion Johnson, excellent guard. He's one of the best players in the tournament, best individual players. He is going to be the star of this game. Why? JT Toppin is not in this game for Texas Tech, and that is a major reason why I think Texas Tech is at severe risk of dropping this first-round matchup. Where do they go to? He's their star. They haven't really looked all that good since he went down. They're 3-3 since his injury. That's not the way to go into the tournament. Akron, on the other hand, was the most efficient team in the MAC this season. I know Miami had a great run, but Akron really was the best team. They deserve to get in there. I love the way that it worked out where Miami got rewarded for their undefeated season and Akron got rewarded for being the best team. Obviously, they had to win the MAC tournament to do that, but they're going to get an excellent opportunity here to move on not one, but potentially 2 rounds because I think that the 4-13 game right next to it is going to be a game that you have to watch too as a potential upset game. Hofstra is a great team with a great player also at the guard position in Cruz Davis. He is going to be a guy who is going to potentially be unmatched in this game. You do have Philon for Alabama, but they're going to be missing one of their best players as well. We won't talk about him because of what happened, but he's missing for the tournament. And that is a big issue for Alabama, who's going to want to run. They're going to want to score. You lose a guard who has scoring capabilities, who has abilities to move the ball around, keep that offense flowing. I think that this does set up well for Hofstra, who is a pretty big underdog, according to Vegas in this one. Keep an eye on this game. I think that this is one that the underdog could come through in, which would potentially set up a 12-13 matchup in the second round. Spoiler, I think Akron is going to win that game. I do have Akron going to the Sweet 16. They are my Cinderella for the tournament. So all you Zips fans out there who thought that I was giving you guys a hard time, I didn't really do this on the podcast too much, but I did do it in some private circles. I'm with you. I think the Zips have a great opportunity to make some noise in this tournament. The last game that I like in the first round, another 7-10 matchup between Kentucky and Santa Clara. Santa Clara is going to be a team that people are looking at and going, who is this? Here's the fun fact about Santa Clara. They have not been in the tournament since 1996. When they were in the tournament last, a guy by the name of Steve Nash was leading the Broncos. So it's been that long since Santa Clara has made a tournament appearance. They deserve this appearance. The West Coast Conference, by all means, was a 3-bid league this year, so I'm glad that they got the opportunity to punch those bids. Santa Clara is a power conference-esque team. They've got a lot of size. They've got good guard play. They're going to match up well against Kentucky, and where I see Kentucky potentially struggling here is what Kentucky team are you going to get in this game? Are you going to get the one that played quite well in the SEC tournament and bowed out valiantly against Florida? Or are you going to get the Kentucky team that we saw at various points during the regular season that really struggled to get the job done against teams that they should be beating based on the talent they have on the floor? Let's see. You also wonder about if they get themselves into foul trouble. I think at this point, if they do get into foul trouble, Santa Clara might actually have the superior roster or the superior 5 guys on the court. So 2 things to look out there for Kentucky. Which one are we going to get? Which Kentucky team? And also, are they going to keep themselves out of foul trouble? I think Santa Clara has a great opportunity to win this game. So good luck to both teams, but I'm picking the Broncos in that 10-7 matchup. Potential matchups that we could get later on in the tournament that would be really interesting to see. I think because I've got Akron going into the Sweet 16 that I see fewer big name matchups as we get deeper in the tournament. I see this potentially being the region where a lot of chaos could ensue. But I do like the potential Elite 8 matchup, which is a 1-2 matchup. So I know I'm going pretty chalk here, but Iowa State is playing their best basketball again, it seems. They had kind of a dip there as we got near the end of the regular season, but then they kind of put it together again in the Big 12 tournament. I love the way that Iowa State played when they were at their best during the regular season. I remember watching the game that they had at home against Houston, and I thought to myself, this is a potential Final Four matchup. And I still believe that. I think that Iowa State has the opportunity to get all the way to the Final Four. And because I think they're going to face a Michigan team in the regional final, I have the Cyclones moving on to Indianapolis. I think Iowa State is going to be the team that finally makes Michigan pay for their loose play, for their potentially reckless play. And there's the talent there with the Cyclones. There's the size there with the Cyclones for them to be able to counter the pure raw talent and athleticism that Dusty May's squad has. So I have the Cyclones moving out of this region to meet Arizona in the Final Four. So we're right on track here, just about under 40 minutes. So I'm going to try and wrap it up here pretty quickly, but I haven't given you my Final Four picks. So for those of you that are going game by game on Around the Corn Sports Blog, this is the point of the show that you should really be paying close attention to. So the East-South version of the bracket, I've got Duke and Houston getting into the Final Four there. I like Houston to take down Duke. The reason I'm doing this is because I think Duke is actually the less likely of the 2 teams to even make it to the Final Four because of the challenges they're going to face in the East region and the injuries that they're dealing with. So I have Houston and Kelvin Sampson getting back to the national title game. Who are they going to play? You've got 2 Big 12 teams on the other side in Arizona and Iowa State. This is going to be an excellent game. There's familiarity with the 2 teams. I think the Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball this year, which is why I have so many of them getting to the Final Four. I have to take Arizona in this one because at the end of the day, there's very little to separate these 2 teams. They played a great Big 12 tournament game that Arizona won basically with some luck, but I think that they're going to be able to learn from what they got in that game in the Big 12 conference semifinals, and they're going to be able to apply that to this game here in the Final Four. So I have the Wildcats moving on to the national title game to take on Houston. And in this game, I think yet again, and I feel bad for him at this point. I wasn't a huge fan of him at one time, but I feel bad for Kelvin Sampson if this happens because I think the Arizona Wildcats are going to cut down the nets and leave Houston as back-to-back national runners-up. So I have the Wildcats cutting down the nets here in the 2026 Men's Division I NCAA Tournament. Again, let me know your thoughts. Let me know who you have. If you want to use my picks entirely, they are up on Around the Corn Sports Blog, and you just heard my Final Four picks, so you can completely copy K-Bex and what I think is going to happen. But beware, it's been a while since I've won the Von Hugendong pool, and so it might not work out for you well if you take my picks. But those are what I have happening. It's going to be an excellent tournament. I cannot wait to go down and watch the play-in games that are happening right now as I'm recording this tournament, and then you won't hear from me for several days as I sit back and enjoy the first and second rounds Thursday through Sunday. So hopefully you guys are watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, but I'll get out of your hair, and we're right on 40 minutes, so we're right where I wanted to be. And until next time, take it easy, Shuckers.